then in Lausanne, now here in Geneva. So thank you, Hubertus, for helping us put this event together. So to kick things off a bit, I wanted to tell you a little bit about what is this event and why we do this. So we've been working really hard throughout the year with the Lendity team. Oh, I thought I didn't introduce myself, but I'm Billy and I'm part of the Lendity team. And we've been working on putting this community of founders, PCs, entrepreneurs, and operators in the Swiss tech community. And it's a pleasure for us having you join us here. For this opportunity and this edition, we thought it would be amazing and a great opportunity to walk you through the whole funding journey of building a startup, from thinking about an idea to turning it into a product, looking for funding options, then scaling, and finally thinking about how to have a healthy cap table. So that's what you'll be hearing today. So yeah, I hope you enjoy and welcome you all.
Great, thanks, Pilar and Rafael. I'm the founder of Lendity. This is also Nicolas here from Lendity, and same from my side. Thanks, Hubertus, for helping us. Thanks to the team, and special thanks for you, Pilar, as well, and Nico. And finally, all the people who came here on such a lovely day. I'm sure we're gonna make it up when we go to the rooftop afterwards. A few words to add to what Pilar just said is we are living in very different times. Many of us, I don't see the very young faces here, so I'm part of you. We've seen a few technology changes, and these are also happening right now. This is part of a change that it's massive that we're living today with the development of AI. Everyone heard AI 5, 10 years ago, but what we can grasp in the last 2 years is very different. And I'm sure all of us, or the vast majority, already is putting their hands to work. Now, the rules are being changed, how businesses are built, financed, and run, and the length that these businesses take to actually ramp up, but also how long they stay private. And this creates a lot of changes in the way we used to do things. We're going to hear from Lucas how now we can build in a way different approach that is mind blowing. Being testing on myself. Deborah can enlighten us with how an investor reads is this wave of AI and how's the right approach to take those exposures. And I think, Hubertus, you can help understand how the founder, through all this trajectory, can keep aligned so the whole journey makes sense also from a financial point of view. And Lendity, we really strive for providing the right capital at the right time for the founders. And this means basically thinking about the capital strategy throughout the journey of entrepreneurs. So we're going to share a bit on that. Thanks again, Hubertus.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone, also from my side. Probably some of you have already known the firm, some are discovering it. WalderWyss has always meant to be the pioneer in everything that relates to startup counseling in Switzerland. We have done that for ages in Zurich. In Geneva, we are trying to ramp up as good as we can, but we are doing it as well. The startup community is slightly different in Zurich, Lausanne, and Geneva. So we need to work with slightly different setups. But I'm very glad to see so many faces here today, and I hope we will be able to tell you something interesting.
So, Lucas, if you want to. Okay, so we'll start with Lucas' presentation. So Lucas is part of the technical staff at Lovable. I don't know, please raise your hand. Who in this room knows Lovable? Okay. Who has been using Lovable at least in the last month? Raise your hand, please. Okay. So, well, Lucas is part of Lovable, which is amazing because he's driving, as Rafa was mentioning, a revolution literally on how we build and scale products. And they are making accessible coding and building apps literally in seconds to non-technical people, which is something that was unthinkable in the last couple of years, people like myself, for example. And so having him here walk us through what they do and how they built this huge company in the last year is truly an honor. So, Lucas.
First, some of the key issues.
Or is AI when we need it?
Yes, when.
Oh, and just a quick note, we'll have some minutes after each presentation for you to ask questions and yeah. And the person, if someone makes a great question or super interesting, you can get a gift. So be attentive. I encourage participation. So yeah.
What is the gift? Is it some seed capital?
Never know.
1 point that from your computer now.
It's my computer, yes. I'm just stuck here.
Like for IT team.
Maybe unplug them.
Worked before.
Yes, it was working fine.
Oh, here we go. Something.
Oh, there you go. Maybe you should.
No. Okay, perfect. Now we're all set. Welcome all to this presentation about Lovable. Thank you for this for attending on this lovely day. Thank you to Lendity and Walder Wyss for organizing and hosting. Thank you so much. I'm Lucas, and I studied physics here at CPFL and ETH. I've been interested in code generation for already like a really long time, since 2019, where I've been pitching like natural language to code. And it's now a really exciting time to see this come alive with Lovable and see how Lovable is really changing the way we're building software. So add-on question here, like who has worked in like a product related role here? I see a few hands. So who here loves to write 20-page specs? One, oh wow, 2 people, not as many. Who here has worked in a design related role? Few. Who loves like going back and forth with the product team on understanding or like see how engineers butcher the implementation? No one. Oh, and who here has worked in engineering related role? How much do you like? Who likes to get incomplete specs and have like specs changes all the time? No one. So these are really the key issues we can now like solve with tools like Lovable. So the big question is like, how is the product building now really changing in evolving with these tools and in the coming years? Like, this is what you would ideally want the software building process to look like. You have a new product idea, you come up with like some nice mock-ups and specification on how it should work. You hand it to design, they make like a really beautiful mock-up and wireframes, and they hand it over to the developers to implement it exactly like it should, like it's specified, and then it comes back and it's a perfectly working software. How often has that happened for anyone? No one. I've never seen it either. In practice, it's in practice, it probably looks a lot more like this. You go back and forth. You have an idea. You write it down. The designer has a very different interpretation. You go back and forth. The developers don't quite understand the specifications because it's not like specific enough or it's misinterpreted. And then after many iterations and many months of development, you arrive at that first like MVP that you're so keen to ship into production. And yeah, so this is the messy part of software production that we're really like simplifying at Lovable. That Lovable is like the one platform that brings everyone together from product, design, and engineering. And it creates alignment. Now everyone can like on the same platform prompt and just bring their ideas to life. Designers can like refine the look and feel by or just taking the code or by prompting. And engineers can work on like more fine-grained parts like the performance or like security aspects. And so this enables really teams to ship in days and not like a month to bring a prototype to life. And so for as an example, at Spotify, like within 24 hours of like bringing Lovable in, we had over like 200 users that's starting thinking and implementing their ideas. And so what does it mean like on the spectrum of software development? Lovable is like really powerful for prototyping. It's like a very quick outcome first approach. You can just iterate with natural language. It's much faster than making the design in Figma, and then you cannot like really like touch it and use it. It's great for rapid prototyping. You can use it great for personal projects, small tooling. And then in between is like internal tooling where you actually have a backend. You can like store your data. You have your templates. You have your guardrails. And so you can build like quick tools that you need for your own personal use or usage with your team. And on the other end of the spectrum, we see like production grade is like, it's not just for prototyping anymore, but we can like directly bring it into production and then really build scalable and maintainable apps. And it's great for like projects that are built from scratch. And in the future, hopefully, so I can like transition existing projects into platforms like Lovable. So the big vision or goal at Lovable is to build the last piece of software. So to create that like platform that enables you to build, operate, and grow real software applications, not just like doing the prototyping. And it will bring everyone together, like product design engineer, to build these applications really fast. And then it empowers like for smaller companies, solopreneurs, it empowers you like as well to launch it, market it, monetize it, grow. And or within like companies, of course, it enables anyone and well non-technical to build and as well like distribute it within the company or make it like successful within the company, and as well have analytics, monitor it, and keep refining the application. And so it really enables like so far software is eating the world, but so far it's very gated. It's only reserved to that like 1% of software engineers that can implement software applications. And Lovable like now really makes it accessible to the 99% that lack the technical know-how to build it. And that's really the power of it, to enable anyone who has an idea and a dream to implement it and just bring it to life and play around and put it into the hands of their users and see how they like it, get feedback, and keep iterating super fast. So this is really for those who have not used it. Go to Lovable and you can just like in ChatGPT put your prompt of some app idea that you'd like to create and let it work for a minute or two, and then you will see a first prototype in the browser. So it's like you don't need to install anything. It's just in the browser in Chrome. You can open it. You need absolutely no coding skills. It comes with a full like backend that's working. It can store your data. Like you can really build fully functioning web applications. Who has not tried it is now excited to try it. Let's see. So I hope that after the talk, everyone will go and try it once. So we're unlocking the creation of this 99% of people who have like no coding skills but have like great ideas. They really understand their users and use cases and how to improve things on the workflow. And so like at Lovable, for example, 67% of users have like no coding skills but are now enabled to successfully implement their applications and bring them alive, get users, get traction, and grow their applications. And to give you an example, at Fortune 500 companies, like that ratio of technical to non-technical people is like 49-1. So it's a vast majority now that is suddenly enabled to just solve problems in their day-to-day work. So from traditional development, it makes the whole prototyping a lot faster. It brings together like you don't need to manually wireframe anymore and then find a technical person to like implement it for you. You don't need to have a team that will plan sprints and so on to implement it or use some no-code tool. With now MCP servers, you don't need to worry so much about integrating systems if you have good MCP servers. Who here has heard of MCP? So so For some context, MCP is Model Context Protocol. Anyone correct me if that's wrong? I think that's correct. And it's like a new way, it's like an API, but for talking to LLMs. So it's like for any platform will expose an MCP. So if you have like some systems in a company in-house, you could create an MCP on top that would then allow LLMs to talk to IT systems so that you could very easily integrate your data in your system if these MCPs are available. And then tools like Lovable can go ask like, oh, well, tell me how to retrieve customer data from this system to show it in a certain way or combine it with this other data from another system. And this facilitates the integration a lot. So it will be very powerful in the future as well to integrate with existing systems. Any questions around MCP? I hope it's clear. And so yeah, the big outcome is like you have like, yeah, after a few days, you have like a really cool working MVP, and you can really bypass the slow testing, like developing, you get it back from the development team, you test it, it doesn't work, you give feedback. All these cycles are really like cut into minutes. So that's what unlocked it Lovable, like the hyper growth. I know a lot of people have heard about it. It's been all over the news. Like Lovable was founded in November 23, and it's been launched in 24, and it's been the fastest software startup to pass 100 million ARR in the world. And we now scaled from to 70 team members working to make the platform even more powerful. And it's being used by many solo founders that are building businesses. We can see like people all over the world running their small businesses on Lovable, creating tooling that they need to be more efficient. You can do as well very powerful agentic workflows. So to just optimize your operations of your business, you can like create agents in Lovable that will integrate, read files, process it, and automate like processes. And as well, it's used by many Fortune 500 companies. Like there's a few that are already using Lovable. And so it's a very exciting time to see how software building is being democratized, and basically like the cost of building software is brought to zero, and anyone is now enabled to build it. So here's a quote from Google. It's very interesting to see how we're moving away from this writing first culture, like writing like a long specification and doing these cycles to create the software, to like really just building first. Which is like prompt it, you have an idea, anyone in the company has an idea, prompts it. In a few minutes, you have a prototype, you can show it to anyone, they can interact, and you immediately go into like getting feedback and improving the working prototype. And yeah, so before you had a lot of dev cycles to get it right, now you can just keep iterating, and the time to actually build it is much shorter than the time to write all these product requirement descriptions and go back and forth. And so all these roles are sort of like now merged somewhat, and people can focus really on what AI cannot do and really refine the hard parts. Here's a few more examples. We hosted with Cognizant. We have the Guinness World Record of the largest online live hackathon with 55,000 people, 100,000 plus projects created. And here the quote is, "The age of AI has opened incredible opportunities. With Lovable, anyone, not just coders, can turn ideas into reality." And it instantly creates these apps and websites by just talking to AI. And what's very interesting, I visited Cognizant this morning in Zurich, and they're very interested in further seeing how they can leverage the tool, especially to streamline communication and this early discovery, like workshops about creating new tools. Now one can, how does one leverage Lovable to communicate with customers to create and discover how a tool should look like. Lovable speeds up the process a lot. And forward looking, there's a lot of work to be done to then bring these apps directly to production and not just keep it at the prototyping stage. And yeah, at the healthcare company, like something that would have taken them a month to do, they've done it just in 4 days with a team of 4, and they're super excited about the result. At Spotify as well, like senior engineering managers, they just delivered prototypes that are working in like 3 days. Or at X Reality, if within 2 days to build something that would have taken like a month to implement in a classic workflow. I'll show some examples of this in a bit. So now we can look into some examples of what the teams are building with Lovable. The teams use Lovable to build new features, or just prototype new features. So here's like anonymized like prototyping for like a new payment system and how to visualize the transactions. This one can prompt like very easily in Lovable. Here's an example from Mexican like I think it's tourist agency or like the travel agency that has been creating like dedicated websites. So this they recreated it in like 2 days, and then they created some dashboard for themselves as well to visualize different parts of the operations. This another one is more like in-house tooling. Like this is someone who created the application to visualize like collaboration networks in some data that they're trying to they're processing. And so Lovable can as well like integrate with any sort of visualization libraries. It has as well access to the web search, so it can start using any framework that is available on the web. So one can really create anything. There's like no limitations in that sense of what one can do with a tool like Lovable. And today we as well have a bit of an investment angle. So I thought like let's talk a little bit about what the moats are in the age of AI. And I believe like one strong moat is the brand, like create products that inspire. Like AI can copy features, but like not emotions in that sense. That is it's hard for an AI. Let's assume there's an AGI that could create a perfect copy of Lovable tomorrow. There's still like a certain barrier at like how do you market, how do you make people excited about the product and get it known? That's something that's much harder to copy. And like Raphael as well brought up is like speed is the new mode. It's just go in an age where AI can pretty much build everything. Just being faster than the competitors is pretty much it's like a key thing to thrive for, and how does one build teams that like you can ship faster with AI, and just like get response to users, see how users like the new feature, learn from it, and then build faster than the competitor. That's like a very big competitor that every company should try for. I think here is very, very interesting as well that to see how like startups can, or like with AI, like in a very flat company where like everyone can just take decisions and ship something in production, and there's like no complicated enterprise hierarchy decision making process. A small company can move super fast, where a bigger enterprise would like need like months to reach a decision and implement something. And if you, how many here have seen like AI being, or how many are using AI to develop their software in the company? Only, and which type, and with like Cursor, or which application? Cursor mostly. And who feels like this brings a real like performance like or speed increase in the development cycles? Only one, two. And who thinks that will be enabling like a lot of productivity gains in the next year? Much more so. I would be curious later on to chat like why is the adoption, or like still like what is preventing the adoption? Like right now is like there's so much like productivity potential out there. At least it's very interesting to see how small small startups like going really fast, and it's enabling with AI one can like ship like super fast now. And like yeah, in terms of like the modes as well, like the next one is just interfaces, so like in different verticals, especially if there's a bridge between some digital and physical, like anything related to like hardware, logistics, or distributions. These are modes that are hard to replicate for an AGI. An AGI cannot come in and replicate a warehouse and operate robots suddenly. So as soon as there's something specific to a vertical or some non-digital interface, that's for sure an interesting mode to combine with AI and agents. And then last but not least, like ecosystems as well, like are very hard to replicate, like building networks, communities around a product where people help each other, and all sorts of integrations that compound over time. It's something that is hard to replicate in a standalone mode. That concludes the talk. So thank you very much, and I encourage you all to try out Lovable and create an app that comes to your mind, or that dream that you'd like to implement. And I'm happy to take questions.
Stan, go for it.
Oh,
Sure.
cannot see the names, but
Yeah, Jérôme Bismillet, hi, thanks for your presentation. If I boil down one slide, you showed you have 500,000 users. Let me take a simplification, two personas. The solo founder, early stage startup. The second persona is this Fortune 500 company, right? And this 500,000. The Fortune 500, this persona has already access, or this moat is in their favor, you know, the infrastructure, the market, the audience. Whereas the first persona founder, early stage, has to start from zero. So in a way, in your user base, do you see this as effectively becoming an unfair advantage to the second persona of Fortune 500, building super apps, shipping fast, already having these moats as basically on their side, already having massive customer user base, versus the first persona who might ship faster, but in the end, he will never be on your curve from 1 to 100 faster than you guys, because it's concentrating actually to these larger players able to innovate. And in the end, my hypothesis is no matter what product service, it needs to be adopted, right? So do you see it as an unfair advantage to one or the other person?
very good question. This is super interesting. Probably I will not know definitive answer. I would say yes, like for any sort of like SaaS play where it's about distributing and scaling a SaaS platform, the developer or the Lovable user that has that distribution channel and everything already like available, it has an unfair advantage. Though we see a lot of use cases from the solopreneurs or so on who are now like a small fish shop owner before, maybe wouldn't go afford like Salesforce and an ERP planning tool, and doesn't have the resources to build like a customized web page and now with Lovable, like we see a lot of these people that suddenly get a whole new level of access to building software. For them, it's super empowering. And as long as they're in the smaller, like niche local like markets, it's super empowering. And the big players are not interested in entering their specific use case. So it's by tool, like for internal tooling in these small niche markets, it's amazing for solopreneurs. But yes, they will have very hard time competing with larger companies and building B2B SaaS products probably.
I think if I could throw one comment on that, because I think it's super interesting. My view is that the solopreneur can focus on a niche that it's not large enough for the big one to actually cater for. Think regulatory teams, decisions, the tanker trying to make that decision, whereas the single one doesn't need to make a lot of revenues to make it viable. Decisions go faster and they can really focus on a niche that's super, super niche and would never justify for the other one. So I would put that lens in a way of also observing this.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm the number one of Lovable for the beginning. I have two questions. The first one is like an inception question. What was the MVP of Lovable? And the second question is, you mentioned 63% are non-technical people. Who are the 43%?
First, so I got in touch with Lovable late 2023, and I visited them in February 24. So I remember seeing the first, one of the very first prototypes. And back then, yeah, it was a bit very close to what you would see now. Of course, the models were not as good, so the results you would get were much, less exciting. And it was just front end, so you could do very simple like front end prototyping. And already back then, it was quite clear that you need to add backend so you can create real apps, and need to wait for it in the models, need to just get there. Is that answering your
Perfectly. And the second question about like the rest of the cohort of the user.
And the end rest, what we see is like it's a lot of sort of engineering adjacent. So maybe like software engineers who are now more in a product role or sort of or business analysts. So they have some engineering class back, they have a bit of know-how, and they're not like completely non-technical. There's a very, very broad spectrum of those backgrounds. Just all these people who see positive potential to simplify something and they just get excited about creating it.
Yes, my name is Victor, and thank you very much for the presentation. How far are you on the roadmap to add backend and detach Supabase?
Oh, you mean like adding like a full like not just like Supabase as a backend, but like full backend capabilities?
Yes.
For sure, that's going to be a very big goal of all the players in the vibe coding space.
Yeah.
Cannot pronounce myself on the exact roadmap here.
Okay. But is that something you guys are working on? And
For sure, it's very, very, very important. Yes, like having.
So is that something we should expect like Q4, or would you like say?
Next question. No, I mean, there's a lot of players that are doing like N8N, for example, that doing an amazing job. So it's not so crystal clear like what will you do or what will be the ideal answer. There's for sure gonna be a certain amount of trial and error and trying different concepts with users, especially non-technical users.
Yeah.
What is the best UI for a non-technical user to like understand a backend or be able to work with backend concepts and maybe do some sort of behavior-driven testing and go through different scenarios? It's not an easy one.
Okay.
And
no, it's not.
And for sure, it's going to be very interesting. Like and there's for sure going to be a lot of discovery and iterations until someday we'll arrive at a concept that somehow works for really enabling non-technical users. So I think you will see like steps and then iterations over many, many quarters.
Yeah. Interesting. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So my question is a little bit similar in to get an understanding of how much in terms of building an app. You were showing the apps earlier on there, which had like actually a dashboard. So we're assuming there's data, if there's a dashboard, and so it's interacting with a database. So here, what are we defining as backend in terms of actually making a fully functional app?
What we're defining, do you know?
How far can it actually go? What can it actually do?
Do you know Supabase?
Yeah.
So, and Supabase is a Postgres layer, like it's a Postgres database in the backend.
Okay.
A lot of enterprise companies are using Postgres in massive production projects. One has edge functions, storage. You can really build really much anything and operate it at scale.
Okay, and Lovable will then do the architecture on Supabase, or do we need to find the architecture of the Supabase first, and then Lovable kind of plugs into it?
So Lovable will do it. The better your prompt and the more specific you can be on how the architecture should be, the better results you will get for now. But so of course, the goal is that for us, for Lovable to work towards that, you do not need to know about architecture. It's just you describe what you want and it will translate it into an architecture that works.
I'm super excited now.
So it covers it. Then next.
Do you have like since you work at Lovable, a cheat sheet for prompting?
Yes, there is. Can we send this later on?
Yes,
with Lovable? Yes, where our designer like Felix has made a Lovable app with prompt browser, and like you have a lot of prompts. And if you go to here, I made a little small NDT clone while making the slides to show like we can create this was like 2-3 prompts, and I think I started creating the application process, and when there's like 3 prompts to get there, and probably the sign up and everything would work right now.
Yeah, there's a prompt library online.
And there's a prompt, so one gets yeah, so there's some examples down here, and there's a prompt enhancer coming that will just, if you do a very short prompt, and then you will like ask follow-up questions and like enhance your prompt, and then you might almost not read the prompt library.
Sorry, I got another quick question. And so you're saying like teams can work on it, so on the same application, then you can have multiple actual people. And how does version control then work in that sense?
Very good question. That's ongoing improvement. So the chat will be blocked, so only one person can prompt at the time.
Okay.
But as many, you can go here if you have, yeah, in any, even on the free word plans. You can go to people and you can just with your email, invite as many people as you like. Everyone has access. If you need access control, then you need to go to one of the higher plans, which should do like admin, viewer, roles, and so on.
Okay, so you can have roles as well. Some are working front end, some are working more on the back end.
It's not yet as granular, but that would be the goal, yes, to limit very specifically, maybe some people have just access to the analytics and to the back end and so on. And in the future, so you can do branches with GitHub. You can switch branches, and there will be more coming to enable and make this even more powerful with reviews and merges.
Okay, so code is actually generated and then posted on a GitHub repo, and then
yeah, you can view the code here at any time, and you can go to GitHub. You can as well like take it on GitHub and then use cursor to refine something. Because we out of time.
Same for us. We're a big fan of yours. Been trying it a lot, but it seems like we hit a limit. We do the prototype, looks nice. We go super fast. There's our ideas. We see a lot of value there, but it seems like there's a limit until when the product can be fully rolled out. Even the use cases that you showed were more focused on how teams do faster the prototype. When do you think that like a real full-fledged app can be fully put into work by someone who doesn't know how to code end to end?
So there are many users across the world who already manage. I'm not saying that they're willing to go through a certain amount of pain and patience to get there at the moment. I'm pretty sure. Like Replit recently has launched like testing agents. I don't know if you've maybe seen it. So I believe that in a very short amount of time we will see platforms that will able to write the code and this like spawn out agents that go test the end user experience, just feed it back, improve it again. It will be longer running, but LLMs know how SaaS use apps should be worked for end users. I mean, there's enough online in the training data. So I believe that will be coming very fast. Yes, actually there will be like built-in testing, and then like these platforms will be able to track, okay, that's how it worked in the previous release, and you make some changes, and then you can just go and understand like, oh, that's the changes. Let me just retest these flows, and then pop up maybe this, and then you have some nice overview where you can see how things were changed. And I can just reason about, okay, this looks like broken now, maybe I need to go back and fix it, and then it will become very easy.
But when do you think that's going to be something not super frustrated that you want to break your computer? Like something like, finally, this is fully live. Do you think next year we're going to be there without all?
I mean, Replit already has this now long-running tasks, very long-running background tasks with agents that I think will come very fast. Yeah.
Maybe I have a follow-up question on the inference cost. I think we are all very well aware that all the LLMs are working with negative margins. So basically what we pay 20 is costing them maybe 30, 35. And it's very challenging from someone who's building on top of those LLMs to actually predict at some point that needs to normalize. So how do you think about that, Lovable?
At Lovable, we don't have that like cost of training foundational models.
Not the training one, the ones running.
Once running.
Yeah.
You mean in terms of, yeah, at the moment, it's not a big pain point for us at the moment.
And how would you advise an entrepreneur? Just forget about you. Just normal entrepreneurs, we're using something that is being sold at a lower price than it costs. That's not very sustainable. How do you think this will evolve?
There's a lot of platforms like Cerebras, for example, that are building specialized hardware that can run like models at like up to 2,000 times or so the speed. Or it's like any new technology. In the beginning, it's very expensive, but we just love the benefits it brings so much. We just go for it, and then industry always like figures out very fast on how to bring the cost down. And then, so for now, I see there's a lot of very interesting platforms that are doing already making the same jobs at bringing down the costs, and for especially like specializing for use cases. So for any entrepreneur, I wouldn't worry too much. Focus on building an amazing product people love, and then cost will be figured out.
Actually, I have a follow-up question regarding the cost side. I mean, when you are an extensive user on Lovable, the size of inference is like crazy. And I saw on the web, because I was like pretty amazed, that you have a markup on insurance costs by 5x. Is this correct?
I cannot. I'm actually not close enough to the numbers.
I'm fine.
I had a silly question, but how much of Lovable is built with Lovable by your team?
That is an excellent question, or all excellent questions. We are using Lovable for many of sort of the apps or internal tooling, or like public facing apps, like for events like Shipped or Launch, like we're hosting hackathons on, and the apps are built with Lovable. At some point, Lovable will be built with Lovable. Yes, that's the
They hired 66 people, if you saw the slides.
So we still
Maybe
not
not something on Lovable.
Yeah.
So if Lovable was built with Lovable, there would be no hiring going on.
Thanks. How are companies integrating Lovable into their standard development lifecycle? Because it's quite unique. So are they creating new work streams just with Lovable, or are they trying to connect that to some of the other traditional tools that they use?
So the main use case right now is prototyping. Just enable this discovery phase really fast when creating new features or products. That's how most companies start using it from day one. And then, of course, very quickly it's like, okay, this works so well. Like we just want to get this into production, and then like it kicks off a whole process of companies figuring out how do we get the compliance and the security and everything into our IT landscape integrated. So it's the next step, and that's probably for late adopters that might be a few years out until everyone is sort of has a streamlined process on how to integrate these tools.
Can we connect to a self-hosted Superbase, the Lovable?
Yes, you can. You can as well buy Superbase Enterprise, for example. I know Superbase has a lot of enterprise features, and you can connect it there and have very good control over your data. Yes.
Can you load an existing app and ask Lovable to polish it or improve it?
Is load an existing app? Not yet, but we'll come.
Is there any other question? Okay.
What question would you like to hear to earn some credits?
I can ask if we can do a Lendity discount code. No specific question right now, thanks. So a lot of amazing questions. Thanks.
So who gets the mic? Okay, you think you have doubt?
Yeah.
All right, I think, look, the gentleman is the biggest fan. I think he deserves it.
You deserve the prize.
Oh, wow. Thanks. Thanks you.
Okay. Okay, so next in our speaker lineup, we have Deborah. Deborah is a partner at Forestay Capital. And if you don't know Forestay, that I'm sure you do, they're a leading VC firm in Switzerland and in Geneva specifically. They are also present in London. And I'm super happy to have you here, Deborah. Deborah focuses on enterprise AI and SaaS, and she sits at the board of many of the leading startups here in Switzerland. So she has a lot of knowledge to share with us, and I'm super happy to have you here.
You want to sit here? Whatever.
Whatever you feel.
Peter?
Yeah. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Super happy to be here. Thank you so much for Lendity for organizing this and WalderWyss for hosting us. Pretty exciting to have something exciting in Geneva. Maybe I'll start with how many of you are founders of software companies in Switzerland? Cool. So I'm Deborah, as mentioned by Philippe. I'm a partner at Forestay. Our offices are based in Geneva, London, and we also have offices in New York, Boston. We're part of the Bflexion platform, which is used to be the investment platform of the Bertarelli family. It became today a multi-asset manager of 90 billion of asset under management, with, as you can imagine, plenty of different investment funds. I'm part of the tech team doing only B2B SaaS, which I found the most exciting, but obviously we have large biotech fund, real estate, private equity, hedge fund. But at Forestay, we're a small fund only focusing on tech. In Europe, East Coast of the US and Israel, we launched our first fund in 2018, mainly backed by the family of 200 million. We've deployed over 14 investments. We've exited 4 today. With 3 unicorns, and we've launched our second fund with external capital this time of 220 million. We're halfway through this fund, have invested in 7 companies, and have already exited 2 companies. This is pretty important to that we have exited 2 companies I'm mentioning because it just shows the craziness of the market we're in. But I'll speak about it a little bit more. We're 12 people in our team focusing on Series A to Series C. Those letters don't mean much anymore. Basically, what we like to see is company with early millions of revenues. So with a product market fit, with let's say 2 to 3 million at least as a start, and we cover those geographies. I won't bore you too much with our track record, but something I'm really proud of is our Swiss roots. And when I started at Forestay, I thought I'll spend so much time looking at software everywhere in Europe outside of Switzerland, because I thought it was very deep tech, biotech, hardware related. And to be honest, we've done, you can see 5 of our investments here, Swiss, 2 exits, 2 unicorn, Nexthink and Scandit. They're all coming spin-off of EPFL or EPFZ. So there's really a boiling ecosystem in Switzerland, growing, and with those are some of our best performers of our portfolio. So quite a boiling ecosystem. Obviously, we have a lot of things in the US and the rest of Europe as well that are quite exciting. I felt like we have a pretty technical audience, so I won't go through the cycles of all the technological major shift we've seen. I think the major one, the one that we all know is the SaaS. that started in 2010s. But the most important one that I want to highlight is AI. AI is everywhere today. We use it daily via ChatGPT, just going on internet today, even on Outlook, you have the Copilot. So without knowing it, you use it every day. It's a huge shift. It's a huge opportunity for founders, for investors to make outstanding returns. All those ways have enabled founders to make to build amazing companies. But as you can see, it's growing substantially. Every single one of these waves have been bigger and bigger. And I think AI is just another huge wave. We're just at the beginning, probably the first 2-3 years into it. And there's so much more to do and so much more interesting to see. I will try not to bore you too long on graphics, but I think this is pretty important because it shows how the AI wave is getting adopted. And especially this year, if you can see on this graphic, you see that the adoption in H1 has increased overall 43%, which is massive. Obviously, the one that is highly penetrated is the tech ecosystem with 72%, but you can see that across the vertical, the adoption of AI is super massive, mainly across verticalized solution of AI, which is basically the ChatGPT or AI solution serving, all type of industries. What's interesting on the right side, the Gen AI funding, and why I wanted to show you this is the appetite of investors to move and to invest in verticalized solution. So as much as we don't see so much verticalized solution today, investors are betting big time on both, on Gen AI in general, and you can see the Gen AI investment in terms of percentage of software funding, which is close to 10% this year, but also the move to invest and put more money into verticalized solution. Please interrupt me if something is not clear. Really, I would love this to be as interactive as possible. Few more graphs before I stop. It's always interesting to see the deal activity. So we've seen less deals. The last 3 years since COVID has been more difficult for us investors, to find the right opportunities and for founders to raise capital. So we're probably at a similar level as last year, but we can see that the volume is still not back at the level of pre-COVID. On the other side, the capital raise, and I'm taking here the main market, Europe, US, and Israel, and Series A to C as an example, but you can see that we're definitely back, or at least last year, and we expect to be a similar level this year in terms of the capital raise compared to pre-COVID levels. This means less startups are raising, but a much higher valuation. And this is obviously due to the AI trend, which is I think Lovable is obviously leading the trend here, raising a lot of money very quickly and at super high valuations. I promise this is the last one. Exit activity. Why do I show you this? And I've mentioned that we've exited 2 companies in our portfolio, one after 18 months and one after 2 years, which is usually not our goal. We're here for the long term and long value creation. But the M&A activity this year has been crazy. Below 500 million, there's a ton of acquisition. Even just this week, 3 startups that I was following have been acquired fairly young. So strategic buyers are super aggressive.
Sorry, what's the acquisition? Sorry that I interrupt you now.
Yeah, please.
Is the acquisition more driven by the technology, the team, the distribution?
Technology, AI, a lot of strategic deals. We've sold one of our cybersecurity company, close to 2 million AR. So super early, they're buying the tech and the team. But a lot of funding, and those companies have to invest in AI. They have massive cost-cutting budget in many fields, but AI is like a no-brainer. They have to do it, and a lot of those large corporates and strategic, they have to push hard. So we've seen massive acquisition this year.
And you expect that trend to continue? Or maybe they are just large companies trying to not lose the AI train and acquiring almost whatever that looks like AI. What do you?
There's definitely a bubble. I don't see this trend decreasing right away, but like everything, it's going to slow down. I mean, this week has been extremely crazy. I think every day I read a new acquisition that is a few hundred millions, if not a billion. So I think we're in at least for 1 or 2 more quarters. When that will come down, I don't know. But on the other side, what's interesting, if you look at the IPO market for tech startup, that has been very frustrating. The public market has been extremely demanding with tech startups. Not only you have to be much bigger than in the past to IPO, but you have to grow significantly, and on top you have to be profitable. Public investors are way more demanding with tech startup at the moment than if you look at other companies. So IPO market, although it's increasing this year, it's still way below the pre-COVID level. And you can see the appetite of here, public investor, putting the bar extremely high. And I mean, you know, the Revolut and all the big, large tech companies, they are just queuing to wait to IPO because of the very high threshold. There are some movement now. There were some interesting tech IPO recently, but it's growing really slowly.
What may be that this on the left side is more driven about the fear of missing out, and the other one is more discipline, fundamentals and stuff.
Absolutely. I think this is driven by strategic needing to invest in cyber and AI, and public market. Public investors are not that keen to invest in tech that are not, you know, the Lovable of tomorrow. So it's gonna come back. So I expect this to slow down probably in the IPO market. A lot of people are saying it's gonna come back in Q4, it's gonna come back next year, it's gonna come back when? I don't have the crystal ball, unfortunately, but it's gonna come back, but you can see that the level is definitely lower. And why I wanted to set up the scene like this is to discuss about the key challenges that I see today in this current market for founders. 2026, this year, and next year has been extremely challenging, extremely exciting, but also extremely challenging. And I mentioned public investors, but also I think private investors have massively increased the threshold of the type of deals. I think, not to name again, Lovable or Cursor AI, those kind of companies are so capital efficient and growing so fast that they're just killing every metrics that we've ever considered in the last few years. So I'll be honest, there's probably 2% of those type of startups today, but it's growing and it's coming. And when you speak to a founder and after 6 months he's explaining to you that he quadruple his revenues, it increases the criteria you're looking at. So investor demand for traction is increasing massively. Managing cash while scaling because of this new trend of companies that are enabled to scale very rapidly with very lean team is putting a lot of pressure on founders today. One of my key topic and one of the topic we discussed a lot with our portfolio companies and at board is retention. We don't speak enough about retention. I'll speak about it more. It's a topic super important, and we too often think about sales, but retention is one of the key metric and a key metric that at the board we're focusing on to make sure that growth is scalable and sustainable. And again, scale. I think Lovable has just showed us the road. I've done this slide. Look at those numbers and forget about them because I wanted to put some numbers, but they will change. And again, Lovable is just showing that this is all wrong. But I will say most of the B2B SaaS companies that we're looking at across Series A to Series C, those are the criteria I would say we would consider as really good metrics. So early days, we expect 100 to 100% growth year on year, gross margin close to 70%, net retention rate 110%. This is the retention metric that I was speaking about. It's actually measuring how much you're retaining your customer and growing. So 100%, you retain 100% of your customers, but it's not like this that you're going to grow. You actually have to get to expansion, minimum churn, and minimum downsell, and you'll get to a higher percentage. And the more you grow, the more we expect as investor you to grow in terms of net retention rate. Churn has to be low, and I think Lovable is a super interesting example because I don't think churn is so low for that company, but the new customers base is so impressive that it completely compensate for the churn. CAC payback, the cost of acquisition of your customers, how long does it take you to reimburse the fact that you've acquired this customer? 18 months probably for an early startup. I would expect less than 12 months at a later stage, and the burn multiple. And this is all about capital efficiency. So this is basically every dollar that you invest, I expect this to be $1 in your top line. So at this stage, $1 invested should give you less because you need to burn more at the beginning. But at the end, for a later stage, that's a Series C, for every $0.8 that I invest, I expect the top line to increase of $1. So this ratio is decreasing, and the lower it is, the better it is. Capital efficiency, I spoke a lot about it. In the past, we had, and when I said in the past, in the last probably 2 years, it was growth at any cost. Today, it's not anymore the case. We expect you to do much more with much less, which is difficult, but obviously AI is here to help. Something that the founders I work with have been struggling in the last 2 years, given the micro environment and the appetite from large enterprises, is how do you do your budgets? It's very complicated. Macro is not helping. So founders are very reluctant more and more to the board to be aggressive on their budget. So what I've seen with many startups, something it is working quite well, is just planning your base case, planning your upside case, and planning your downside case in case you don't see your sales increasing. First, you have a range to offer to your board and to your investors, and you know what button to click as soon as you're doing much better than expected or not so much, and you can react. Because speed and agility in this market is so important. You're going to make mistakes, you're going to miss your numbers, but you need to adapt quickly. So runway planning and making sure you continue to invest is super important. Lean models and operation, that will be the last one of this slide, is obviously super, super important. For most of the companies that I work with in the last few years, because of automation and AI, have decreased. So they have increased their top line and are basically flattish or slight increase or slight decrease in terms of FTE. And that's super interesting. It means it shows that there's so much gras in all those companies, so much beef that you can take. And founders are somehow reluctant because it feels like you're not doing well because you reduce your workforce. But just to give you an example, I think was for me was quite interesting. The CEO of UiPath, a super large software company that I'm sure you know, 40 billion of revenues, 4,000 employees. The CEO had made a new rule that for any new hiring, you had to go up to him to validate this. What it means basically, you're not going to go and knock on the door of your CEO every 5 seconds to justify. So what you're going to do is analyze your workforce, make sure you cannot automate some of it, and UiPath is a little place for this. And you're gonna get new talent by changing your workforce and gaining in efficiency. So that's also something we've seen more for, I would say, B and C round companies, but becoming super lean and super efficient is really the flavor of the day. I talked about retention and net retention rate, which is, I think, one of the topics that I find the most interesting. And Salesforce is an amazing example. When you look at the 5 years of their growth, you see that they've just built their push the sales to acquire new customers, acquire the new customer. Then what brought their growth is not new businesses, is increasing their retention rate with their current customers, upselling. That shows that it's not really sales that's doing the entire job. It's what we like to call customer success. I think customer success it's an old name that they deserve a better name. I think they deserve a growth engine, or we give all the kudos always to the sales team. But customer success are basically what makes Salesforce so successful. And if I can give you another example, Slack, if you look at their amazing journey, 75% of their growth is coming from upsell. So most of the job is done by some customer success. And you know what? That none of my boards, they bring the CRO, the CMO, the chief of staff, they bring all the C-level and never the customer success. Why? They're the team who are bringing the most revenues when it's working. And not to be confused with customer support, which is very often misleading. So this is super important if you master your customer success team, and you don't have to build it right away. It usually comes at this when you have a certain maturity and go-to-market engine, but it is absolutely crucial. And most software companies that have nailed it have amazing customer success that are driving the efforts. So this is an example just of a graphic of how a lot of companies are working. There's no one model, but what I wanted to highlight here is basically that ARR obviously is coming from sales, but what's really nurturing ARR is net retention rate that is fueling your ARR and your top line. This is what matters. And what is impacting your ARR? Your deployment, if it's slow, or user adoption, efficiency, lack of skill and expertise, product issues and values. You need to nail your net retention rate. You need to take care of this. It's the key metric to ensure that you're going to grow and you're going to scale for the long term. We talked about scale. And I love to put that at Forestay, we use a lot this kind of body scan because it's you know, to make your business scale, there's so many different parts of your body that you need to make work. And if you want to run, you need to make sure that everything is going to work. But for me, the first question that I ask to founders, and what's quite important for me to hear is, what's your story? First, before hearing what we have built, what is the story and why do you come and present something to me? The crucial second question is the problem. What problem are you solving? If you look at most of the website of SaaS businesses today, it's unclear what they're solving, what problem they're solving. And sometimes we want to make it so complicated that we don't understand what's the problem. And it sounds probably very simple, but I can assure you that often when I ask what the problem is, very rare founders are able to explain it in one sentence. Sure. What are you solving on the market? What problem are you solving? One sentence, short. And of course, the positioning is coming after. Another important factor for me to be able to be in a good position to scale is to understand if you're in demand capturing or demand generation. What does this mean is, are you basically eating market share of your competitors, or are you creating new demand? And usually it's easier, and most founders at the beginning want to capture what's on the market and what's on the plate of their competitors, because we know the budget is there from the enterprise side, and it's easier to convince people that you have a better tool than the others. Of course, more difficult is to generate demand. There's no budget, you create a new industry. It's way more complicated, but a mix of the two is never very healthy. Most founders start with demand capturing, but they know they're going to go to demand generation. But for me, it's very important to understand the difference, to say, I'm creating a new category. I'm not replacing anything, or I'm not just better than the others. I'm just creating and answering a new problem. This is very difficult, and it's very difficult from day one to sell. And because you're in a rush of selling and improving your product market fit, you're gonna very often start with demand capturing. As long as it's clear and you know when to tick the button and believe that you're strong enough to go on demand generation mode. But most successful companies dare to go on demand generation mode. Reaching a product market fit. This is often something that founders push, like we have a product market fit. To be honest, this is really important, but that's not all. And most successful companies have changed their product market fit 5 times in their story, in their journey. Next thing,
How do you define PMF? What's PMF for you?
You have a product that you're able to sell on the market with a specific use case. So answer a need of your customer. How would you describe it?
I think it is people are willing to pay for something, but then also the retention of it comes back. So like, is it a one-time thing? And I think some other product managers and I have discussed a lot about EMF move. So I was just curious how you saw that working.
It's super important, but it doesn't matter to don't get it right the first time. Like Nextthink, our Swiss software company based out of Lausanne, they now moved to the US. They generate a few hundreds of millions of AR. They changed 3 times. They reached 5 million AR being a security company, and now they're an IT company. Doesn't matter. As long as you're honest and you figure it out soon enough, it's okay. And to be honest, as an investor, I won't judge because you believe you're selling something that you can do better, and you will elaborate and reiterate on your product market fit. Once you feel you have a product market fit, then it's about growing your go-to-market engine. And that's where most startups fail, is finding the right leaders to build your go-to-market engine. And when we speak about scaling, to come back to some of the other topics that I mentioned, scaling doesn't mean you have to add more people, more resources. It's increasing the speed and frequency of every single thing you do. Doesn't mean you need to do more people. You need to hire more people, which is a little bit of the reflex that we have the last 10 years. You want to scale, you grow your team. I think this new wave of AI is just showing that you can do much more with much less. So you can raise money, but you don't have necessarily to increase your team. Just think about how to reorganize your team, how to replace your team, and to make sure that none of this job can be done in a different way. That's all. Any other questions? Yeah.
You just mentioned at the end that the last decade you were like fueling growth by hiring people.
Yeah.
So what is the new job of a VC now?
It's a very good question, and actually, some startups are not looking for very successful startup. Like Dust AI is one that I've been following. They've reached 30 million AR without raising any capital, and they've been chased by investors. So there is this new trend. And to be honest, I'm really happy that it's happening. Obviously, it's less good deals for us. Then when they are accepting capital, some needs money. They do not all grow, on their own. Some do need the capital, and some do it for the expertise, opening doors, operational expertise, and network, I would say. So it's not the end of the VC world. I think our job is also changing. Like we work, we're not going to increase our team, even though our fund size hopefully is going to increase. We're using agents to source deal, to prep for all our calls. I receive a kind of a memo on competitive landscape and analysis of the company and the founder that I'm going to speak to. So we're working also. Our job has massively changed, but there's still a lot of money to invest in companies. There's probably too much money at the moment compared to the numbers of companies that we would love to have. But there's definitely this trend of companies that are snubbing VCs. But it's good. It's a cycle.
Covering software and covering AI, do you see a lot of, how do you think about AI companies that have certain applications already? So AI-powered chemical company or AI-powered industrial versus somebody like Lovable who empower all sorts of customers. What do you think is the more valuable proposition?
Do I understand you're speaking about verticalization and horizontal
Yes, or
solutions?
do you find yourself working with other teams, with other coverage teams as part of?
It's a really interesting question, and it's a question we're discussing internally a lot. I think there was penetration of AI is with horizontal solution, like the Lovable, the OpenAI, the ChatGPT. Those are those are horizontal solutions serving across industries. I'm a strong believer that verticalized solutions are coming very strong, and in specific sectors, you will have to train your model in very specific use cases and with specific data. So, for example, legal tech, I'm a strong believer that you have to be super verticalized in that sector, and that's the ChatGPT will never replace a solution that will just answer those type of questions for lawyers, for example. But I think I think both. There's definitely a domination of horizontal solution today, but verticalization is coming. I think we discussed this briefly before. Competing with OpenAI today, for me, makes little sense. Going into a very specific vertical and building your own company in that specific vertical, I think has a lot of more potential today. But I think both will sustain, but it's going to be, I think, harder to build horizontal solutions that are where you're able to grab the market quickly.
The metrics are very different for the two.
Yeah, absolutely.
Vertical kind of sales cycles and customer acquisition costs and everything else. It's totally different.
And we do look at it differently.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, excuse me, I forgot.
No, Kim, I will ask you that.
What about the long-term vision? I understand about cutting fat, but this is cutting fat from entry-level jobs, and you have to think about the long-term scalability, like long-term. What about these entry-level people? They're going to miss out a lot, right? And they're the future of these companies as well. So are you guys completely ignoring that aspect, or is it part of your consideration as well?
It is a problem, I believe. I think we're completely changing. And I think even if you think about engineering or data scientists, I mean, they use a lot of tools. I would not be able to do the same job, but I think the job is changing a lot. And the issue we're having is that we're not building the next senior people, and because we're not training those people. But I think also AI is going to help us to create new type of jobs. So I want to be optimistic that our kids are going to have very different jobs than us, and we'll have to adapt to this. But we're definitely healing the next in certain areas.
Yeah, but how did these people get the experience then today?
They will get other experience. They will get other jobs. There's still a lot of things that AI cannot do. So
I hope so.
I hope so too, but I just think it's a transition. I think we're gonna lose this expertise and gain it somewhere else. So it's gonna go somewhere else. It's not like people need to work. Everybody's gonna work. We're not gonna reduce the workforce. I think we're gonna have a more clever workforce and put people ability where it's more needed. And people, I hope, will have more fun also doing this.
Yeah. We're going to be running the program. You mentioned verticals using OpenAI, for example, in their business. You don't see it from an investor standpoint. You don't see it as a threat. that a business is built on third-party software?
So we try to be not completely dependent of one-party software. It should be open, but I think the way OpenAI and the others have built their model is very much to get access and to help all those businesses, especially the verticalized solution. We'll see how it evolves in terms of will those big giants acquire those verticalized solution, and then it will become threatening for others to use them. But so far they've built a model where it's win-win. So as long as you're not dependent on one model, I think it's fine. But time will tell if those players will want to be more verticalized. I think they don't need it for the time being. They have massive opportunity to grow horizontally. There is a risk that if they start buying it, but I think they understand that if they start buying verticalized solution, they won't be able to sell their solution or share their model with more verticalized softwares.
Sanctions point of view also, it could be an issue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your job is to create return for your investors, right? So matters at what price you buy and what price you sell.
Yeah.
Do you think we are in a bubble?
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, so that makes your job more difficult, I guess.
Yeah. And we have a fairly concentrated approach, which doesn't help with this bubble because we do not like to bet too much. We have high conviction investment philosophy. But there's definitely a bubble. There's definitely a lot of agentic AI buzzword used that are not really agentic AI. There's a lot of crazy valuation. I mean, this week I've spoke to a few companies that are raising early millions and raising a valuation of a few hundred millions. So you have to exit at 1 billion at least to make a decent return, and the company is barely generating revenues. So this depends the type of investors. Some investors creating more than us and will take more of those bets. For us, it's more difficult. We're trying to focus more on the fundamental, and this is the beauty of software. I think it's the challenge with AI native company for us. It's that it becomes very quickly hyped. But like all hyped, it will come down, but we're definitely on the high end of the bubble at the moment.
And you think that that kind of bubble can impact valuations of, let's say, classic B2B SaaS companies? Let's say you say, okay, I like the company, the metrics are impressive, blah, blah, blah. But since you are not AI, your valuation multiple is poor. And that creating a problem for companies when they have to fundraise. As a B2B SaaS expert, what do you think?
That's it. At the Series A and B, we mainly review today or consider AI native companies. I think for the later stages, it's a little bit less the case because outside of the Lovable, there are not so much who have gotten to this stage. Yes, to be honest, we discussed no later than yesterday with the team, and there are a few interesting stuff in our pipeline, companies growing crazy, and then you go to the IC and you present a company that is, doing well, 115% growth, 3 million AR, and people are like, well, 2 years ago, people would have died, to look at those companies and push it to the IC. So definitely teams feel a little bit in the hype. The big question for me is how scalable it is. I mean, we've seen some very successful Wyss is an amazing story. Cursor, Lovable. How long can you sustain? Wyss have definitely shown that they can do it, and there are going to be some big winners. We also you didn't have Hopin in your graphic. I think it's because they lost the traction, but it was at the time the fastest growing software company. They grew 150 million in 18 months, and they crashed to zero. So there's also this question of how sustainable is that growth?
Yes. In general, for a VC with the knowledge, the network, and the resources you have, but the challenges increasingly facing on being able to source the quality target deals and the valuations, do you see an increasing model to have an adjacent venture building studio to tap into earlier into pre-validated de-risked opportunities?
So we are actually considering this very seriously. And a lot of funds do this, especially I think with AI native companies and cyber. Those are the two sectors where we believe the stage we usually like, early millions of revenue, is like overly expensive, super difficult to access. So cybersecurity, we've been investing earlier stage than the rest so far. And AI native companies, now we've been a little bit more aggressive when we're getting out of our comfort zone because sometimes there's not even a product market fit, or it's just so it's not necessarily the same type of expertise, but we're thinking about having a dedicated team, fully focus on this, and that could fuel. But a lot of VC funds have done this. And some funds also invest in other funds, which I always find tricky, but they invest in very early stage funds just to get the deal flow and the ideas and just to see what's going on the very early stage of the markets. But it's definitely a big trend, yeah.
I have a question regarding business economics. So in the world of SaaS, I mean, IRR is kind of a good proxy because the gross margin was really high. With AI native startup and with the inferences cost, what's going to be the new business unit to look at?
You mean the Lovable and company?
I mean, because this startup are built on LLMs, which cost way more than, let's say, 10%. Which layer we should look at?
I think it's difficult for me because I'm very much into unit economics, but I think you need to catch those companies early and don't care about the unit and economics. It's about the team and the product more than the rest. And it's how most of the OpenAI and other companies have gained massive success. I don't see software so far from this, but you need to close your eyes on unit economics for those types of companies at the beginning. And you to have a strong conviction on the product. And again, we do not do a lot of those deals, for good or for bad, because we miss a lot as well. We focus on fundamentals, software metrics, but this new wave is definitely make us reconsider every single day the metrics we're looking at.
Like looking behind the AI hype, like for example, in 2019, it would be super interesting bringing up the conversation of natural language to code. A lot of people would smile at it. So what would you see, or it's like 5 years out from now, like what's the next big thing we should be looking at past AI, like robotics or digital biology or quantum computing?
Quantum computing is an area we're spending a bit of time to make sure we're gonna catch the wave. I think everything you've mentioned is already starting. The one that we're spending at Forestay a little bit of more time on is quantum computing. Yeah, it might be the next wave, and it might come very quickly.
Any particular use cases or verticals you're looking at, or it's still very, very early?
It's very early for us, yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
No, I would like to give the mark to who was the one asking the venture studio. I think he was spot on the way you smile. So what's the gentleman, I think, on you asked about the venture studio, right? It seems you hit the nail in the right. Thank you. So maybe as I pull the presentation out, who knows what Lendity does? So show my hand. Okay. We have work to do with that. Let's see. I practice this every time and I get it. I always think I can improve it, but I think the thing I can say what Lendity does is provide the first loan to healthy Swiss scale-ups. And you will understand much better what we do. Nothing new for the audience here, but how are companies being built and how is capital being used throughout the life of the company. At the beginning, we need to build stuff. We have an idea, we have a team, we need to put together, we need time, we need resources. And all this effort requires capital. And the way that we can finance this at the beginning is the so-called sweat equity, or we find people who believe in us, people who believe in the team, the so-called angel investors, the triple F, or early stage investors. But at some point, we need to accelerate this. And as we come to this phase, especially on today's market, we need different sort of capitals for different stages. The reality that we observe and the reason why we started what we do is because there's not enough thought put into this process. And decisions that have been made wrong at certain stages yield results way longer that can't be undone. At the beginning, I think someone asked about the PMF. Well, what are the phases? But this is the beginning. We get together with some friends. Maybe we vibe code something would have taken us 9 to 12 months. Now, maybe in 2 months or even less, we have something that we can show to a few investors, people who believe in us. Then we can go out there, try to sell it, get our first clients. And maybe between phase 1 and 2, this is where all the angel investors, seed and pre-seed seed happens, where the product gets refined, we go to the market, we understand what client wants, and at some point we hit the so-called product market fit. I think the definition that was exchanged was the right one. I would like to add also that can be sold in a repeatable manner without needing to actually adjust the features all the time. And when a company is there, other options open up. And these options also go hand in hand with the right sort of capital. But we see for a few companies that have tapped a combination of equity or debt or only debt. As a company matures, companies can tap different sources of capital. In this case, it's debt. Debt has the typical advantage that has a lower cost, it's non-dilutive, and of course has also some cons that we're going to cover. But at the beginning, the only way to build this is using equity, and as the company matures, more options opening up. Now, equity is like using a rocket fuel. This is some words we like to use. At the beginning, you need the rocket fuel. You need to really get to the speed to build and be able to close your clients, hire the team. It gives you validation. It gives you the right tools, the advisors, the name in the market to go and hire and so on. And there's some market, some industries, some products, the typical winner takes it all, that you can only do it with raising equity. Imagine OpenAI, as we discussed, the inference cost. They lose this is not like Uber paying a lot of money to acquire customers, but they earn with each transaction underlying. This is losing with each transaction. So there's no other way than throwing a lot of money here and trying to get this binary outcome right. Now, there's a point where we call the inflection point. We went really fast here. And the inflection point is where the company has already achieved this moment where client diversification is there. The team is the right one already. There's a roadmap on how to keep evolving, but maybe the company is not going to grow exponentially anymore. It's not going to become lovable. The lovables are really rare. We'd love to have more of you, but this is really rare. And when most entrepreneurs, when they are in this situation, they default to equity because that's the type of capital you use. And the reality also is because there were no other options a few years ago until we have the access to data and granularity we have today, there was no way to understand the underlying performance of each of these companies as we can. But today we can do it, and that's what we do. At this point, typically, when you're growing maybe 100%, 150% or less year on year, you can decide whether to keep raising equity or not. But with each equity raise, you're increasing the bar. As Deborah said, the kind of million, they cannot exit below 1 billion to make return for people. And this is where the treadmill happens for companies that shouldn't have raised equity. Not everyone should have raised equity. Maybe just, I want to ask you a quick question. How many deals per year do you end up closing?
3 to 5.
3 to 5. Many.
But that's pretty much on the low end for the industry. A lot of funds, I would say, have a broader approach, and they would do about 10 to 15 per year.
And how many would you say would you see on your hand, on your desk per year?
The whole team or me?
The whole team.
Few thousand.
It's a crazy amount. The ones that justify getting equity, it's a very few amount. And what's the problem we're observing in the market? When you get equity, typically you will get equity because investors are taking a significant risk on companies achieving milestone. They also want the return that comes with that. And in a very fair manner, the last investor that comes in, it's building on your preference stack. They will be the first one being paid back whenever exit happens. When you build that preference stack, that might put into risk the shares of the founders and the team. Because on that stack, the founders of the team are at the bottom. That has nothing wrong as long as you're building a company, and that's the one we discussed, that it's going to be growing exponentially and the valuation will come along. But maybe 95% of the companies are not going to be there. And you need a capital that goes with it. This is where the example that I want to walk you through, in case you are not part of that rare case, and you already have proven the company has product market fit and all the metrics we just discussed. Once you get a new investor, you cannot kick them out. There's no way, right? So this is like a sort of a marriage. And I want to give you an example because we discussed companies that are growing so fast, but I want to give you an example of a company that today has 2 million in ARR. They raise typically the valuations you actually use for raising money are not the same valuations when you exit, but let's assume they are raising at 12x. Normal dilution of 20%. This is a post-money valuation of 30 million. This is typical transactions we see for well-doing B2B SaaS in Switzerland. Now, depending on the stage where the investor is coming in, they will have a return expectation because we all know, out of 10 investments that they do, just a handful of those will yield the results that are going to be the fund returns to pay back for the other ones. So that means that every single investment has a return expectation attached to it. So if someone is entering at this valuation and they need to get the 10x return, very similar to the example you said, when they enter at 100 million, they need to exit at 1 billion. Here, the company needs to exit at 300 million for the investor to make 10x. And most likely, they will drive the company through the board, through the ideas, through the advisors, through opening doors to get to that point. That implies for a company that has 2 million in revenues, that company at an exit valuation should hit 42 million in revenues without ever raising again, because if they raise again, this builds another stack on the capital. Now, when we're building companies like Lovable, you don't think about this because this is becoming either we make it or we crash into the wall. But if we make it, we are the stars of the decade. But for the normal entrepreneur, this is not the reality, and this deserves a thought that is not being properly given. We see, and this we're gonna tie it up with Hubertus, who's gonna share with us. But we see something that is called broken culture, which is the symptoms of, on our view, decisions that have been made wrong in the past. And these are a combination of having granted a lot of shares to an advisor at the beginning, who now, I don't know, moved to Buenos Aires or from Buenos Aires, a co-founder that left year 2 and you didn't have a proper shareholder agreement to vest this, or you raised in 2021, 2022 with a crazy valuation amount that there's no chance the company's going to grow there. So your common shares are completely underwater, are worthless. So the carrot, the incentive for the founder to keep grinding and seeing value here, it's not there. And this is what we call a broken cap table. A bit of the same. This is a few things that we take a look at, but maybe I want to say a few words here. And we're missing the cons here of debt because we only highlight the positive things. The problem with debt is you need to pay it back. Unlike equity, you will pay it back. It has a lot of strings attached, but you only pay it back if the company is successfully exiting. Otherwise, you don't need to pay it back. Now let's go to the advantages. Advantages are, it's fully non-dilutive. It means you keep the shares you have. Everyone keeps the shares you have. This benefit is not only for the founders, but for any investors who have been investing in the company. You keep the control. And this type of financing is much faster to execute. That allows you, in the so-called example of companies that are growing super fast, if you only imagine a company that was doing 400% year on year, if you delay 1 quarter the capital raise by using debt, that means that you will be doubling the valuation of the company in 1 quarter. Right? You use a metric based on your revenues. In 1 quarter, you're doing 100% growth. Means the valuation that you would get by waiting 1 quarter will double the valuation of your company. It means you will need to give up half of the shares for the same one. Now, when would you like to do that? Well, you would like to do that when you have some visibility on pipeline. We're about to close this partnership. We're about to sign Lovable. And why would you like, you better use a tool that allows you to maximize that at the end. Same here, when someone should be using debt. I would like Nicolas to come afterwards, but when do you need to use debt? When it makes sense? You have predictability. Debt is a predictable capital. You know your revenues, typically B2B SaaS. You can run a cohort analysis on your clients. Hopefully, this is more B2B. You know the net retention numbers. You go deep dive in the client acquisition cost and all the acquisition metrics. And once you get that information, once again, non-existent 5-10 years ago with the tools we have, now you do. Once you get that information, you can come up with a decision of taking that risk. Someone like us, for companies that are by definition losing money. These are low cash flow negative companies. Maybe Nico, you can walk us through a few of the metrics and take a look at.
Just for the most boring part, I'm going to talk about the metrics that we usually look at step providers. First of all, since we are not a bank, we don't take the metrics as themselves and put it into a very fancy model and have an outcome, yes or no. Our job is much more art than science. So we look at some metrics, but in order to understand what story are those metrics telling us. For example, the revenue level and consistency is a very important thing, not for the figure itself, but because for companies in a range between 1.5 and 2 million ARR, which are the typical, is a typical range in which we can start engaging, those revenue levels are indicative that the company has already de-risked a lot of early stage risks and has a proven and working product market fit. So when we look at the company, we look at the revenue level, the ARR, and of course the predictability and the recurrency of that ARR, we can assess if the company has achieved its product market fit or not. Also, unit economics, the typical ones, the LTV, the CAC, the retention, as also Deborah mentioned. We need to understand how efficient the company is acquiring its clients and how good it is retaining them. Why is so important for us? Because our funding, which needs to be paid back, goes directly to that growth. So if you are not acquiring your clients efficiently using our capital, you won't be able to pay it back to us when it's needed. And no one wants that. Also, the path to profitability. There's a thing that is very important for us. As also Deborah mentioned, is not growth at all costs. For us, we need to see that the company has a realistic scenario in which can go to profitability if it's needed, whether it is about cutting costs or increasing revenues somehow. But we need to see that the profitability is a realistic scenario in case of need. Also, client diversification is extremely important as long as we need to see that the revenue is predictable. We can rely on a company that which 50% of its revenue is within one client and the rest is, I don't know, 4 or 5 additional clients. If that one client churns, we lose the 50% of the revenue, and we can't afford that as a company. You won't be able to pay the debt back also. And responsible growth, we call that as a lean and healthy structure before you came to us. If you are already in debt with senior lenders that are similar to us or more senior than us, you already have some pressure on your cash flows that we, as lenders, will add even more pressure on those cash flows. So we prefer to be the first lender that the company has, rather than be the third or the fourth and coexist with other senior lenders, which could be with a really complicated situation for the company because of the pressure that we can put all together as, let's say, a lender's team to your cash flows. So I give back the stage to Rafa and go for a closer and then the Q&A.
Sure. Look, debt is not glamorous. You're not gonna see there. Your friends from high school are not gonna call you and say, "Wow, you closed a debt." It's not the exciting one. But debt is a tool that every CFO should have in the toolkit. Every entrepreneur, as they achieve certain point, they need to think about it. And just maybe showing only one metric, if you see public tech companies, the debt to equity ratio is 1:1. And guess how that ratio looks like for private companies? That's close to 0. The reality is that it's a very interesting option, but one needs to understand public companies need to disclose a lot of information, and it's easier for them to think that. We do a similar work on dicing and getting this information right, so we understand all these metrics. But our mission, our goal is just to make sure that the founders and those backing the founders at the early days actually keep most of the value at the end of this journey. Thank you. Yes.
What's your fee structure and any type of business introduction scheme you're working with or your?
Why? Could you introduce us to some?
Sure.
We can always start off. Fee structure is we are fully non-dilutive, so this means that we on the upside you might find some lenders that end up having equity kickers or equity component. We have 0 of that, and we carry the full downside. So our fee structure is just a fixed interest rate that varies on the risk of the companies. Typically, it never ends up being more than low teens. And we never work with introductory, but typically always open to discuss. But the reality is companies end up now at this stage, they end up finding us more than we finding them. Yes.
What kind of collateral or guarantees?
Yeah, very good question. So the companies are by definition cash flow negative, right? They're losing money. And we cannot apply any of the trade-offs. If a bank gives you a loan for a company that's cash flow positive, they will introduce so-called financial covenants. You need to keep this level, this ratio of EBITDA to revenues or to companies and so on to service the debt. We don't have that. So what we do is we sit on top of the capital structures. And in the jargon is we are senior in that capital structure. And we took, depending on the case, some sort of asset of the company that can range from receivables, IP, bank account, whatever it is.
The duration of the loans?
Other great question. We should include of those maybe. Good idea. And we think the value creation takes time. Typically, we engage with B2B SaaS. Sales cycles are long or longer than B2C. That's why we want to go as long as possible. And that is typically we do 5-year term loans.
And where does your money come from?
Question. We run a fund. It's a Luxembourg-based fund with institutional investors. I think the environment today feels very difficult for someone like Deborah to create the return she needs to create or investors expect. All my respects to your job. Ours is a bit more boring in that sense. It's more predictable. We cannot just get an exit in less than 1 year and fund returner. But we can also help founders to really achieve a life-changing event for those that are not in that path.
Yeah, another question. Do you like to see the deals like maybe 6 or 12 months before they need the actual loan? Just to sort of set the scene?
It ends up happening like that de facto, but we don't necessarily have to. What is very important for us is that we're never going to engage as a last resource. So we need to see that the company has enough runway, and in addition to our facility, the companies can achieve a theoretical profitability, assuming our models, right? So we don't need to be talking 9 months before, but the type of companies we work with, they are somehow on the radar. We know each other, we know the VCs, we know the boards. We get referred a lot as well. Yes.
What's the typical deal size, and do you have any focus geographies?
Yeah. So geographies for the time being, we're only doing Switzerland. And deal size ends up being more a restriction about the existing revenue level of the companies than ours. But we don't want to never lever too much on the company. That creates a risk. And typically, that line means 50% of ARR as starting facility. So if you are having 5 million revenues, can be a facility of 2.5 million.
And that's kind of your sweet spot, 2.5 million.
Transaction size sweet spot, anything between 1 to 5 million.
Okay, thank you.
How long for you does it make to make a final decision? Yes, no.
Say that again, sorry.
How long is the process to make a decision?
Right. Yes, I would like to say, we throw everything to GPT and it comes up now. Nico, what do you think?
Yeah, between 3 and 4 weeks. In the first week, we already know if we can keep talking and exploring, or if we can't do anything. And yeah, between 3 and 4 weeks, we can do it. Sometimes this take longer because when we make a decision, start talking about terms, etc. And sometimes we need board approval for this type of facility, etc. And takes longer because of that kind of things. But yeah, between 3 and 4 weeks, I'm regretting now. Between 4 and 5 weeks.
He can shorten that. He's got a solution for you.
What's your success rate of the companies you funded? You know, how many payback, everything goes well versus not so well?
Yeah, so we don't take any upside, right? This is a very limited fee from a perspective. If I ask the audience what's the cost of funding of equity, I will hear everything around that. But if you make the numbers, equity maybe is 4 to 5 times always higher than our cost of funding. So the reality is we have a very low return. So we need to be really cautious on who will lend. We didn't have any defaults for the time being, and we expect not to have any defaults.
It's a bit an out-of-the-box question, maybe both for the equity funding or the lending funding, but how do you see the new mix with token funding as well, kind of on-chain financing? Is it a risk, something you see, something you don't like to see?
From a purely corporate, so the way that this money will land in the company can land, we can have the expertise afterwards for the workers, but can land as some sort of debt or some sort of equity. Now, whether the wrapper before that comes through an on-chain solution, an SPV or direct lender or direct shareholder, doesn't really matter for us. We look at the fundamentals of the underlying company less than what was the vehicle that funded that specific capital.
So unlike a traditional financial institution, you wouldn't have a risk flag raised because it's a blockchain-based company.
Okay. So sorry, I misread the company. I take a personal approach to this more than more like company policy. I've seen a lot of things in blockchain, and I feel that I'm not well equipped to make a proper assessment without spending a crazy amount of time. So my initial feeling is, if it's crypto, maybe most likely we're not the right partners, but without any fundamental reason I can give you. Right.
How do you view the competition in the Swiss market? I was really surprised recently, one of our portfolio companies in the US, for a loan, she received 15 term sheet. The competition is fierce.
Yeah, good question. So the reality is we are the only players in Switzerland. There are a few London-based players that will engage when maybe you are on the 10 million plus revenue. These are the usual players. But below that level, we are the only ones in Switzerland. I think the market is pretty small. You need a Swiss franc fund, or at least the ability in your documents that allow you to do this funding. You need Swiss contracts. You need a very good lawyer to do it. But I think the reality is the fact that the market is small doesn't allow a lot of players to build living there. We have seen large banks maybe step around, but they don't really do any credit analysis. It's more saying, okay, maybe one of our ultra high net worth clients is also a shareholder, so we close an eye, or maybe because they are, the latest companies on marketing in Switzerland, and I'm saying whatever thing, but a federal counselor just shake hands, okay, let's build a loan. But the reality is that we're not facing a lot of competition.
Which is good for you, but for founders, they don't have much power to negotiate the terms, I guess.
Definitely, yes. The more competitors, but there's bargaining power, definitely. I guess this will evolve. But we also, this is a very small market. We cannot say, let's 10x our fund. We wouldn't be able to deploy it. So it's also a challenge to fight. Yes.
You mainly lending to software company?
Maybe software companies, fintech, or tech-enabled services. The whole idea is to have high gross margins that eventually this can turn into.
Okay, so my question can be relevant. Do you connect with the analytics of the company?
Absolutely. We really get a magnifier and look you.
Okay, amplitude.
Top to head. But something that ended up happening, because we delivered this also to the board, and then the board at the company's at our stage, imagine 5 million ARR more or less. They never done that slice and dice at the data we did. And then there's a lot of findings popping up, and many times we also even retain after we give the loan to help them bring these insights. Yes.
What's a typical term? Like, is it a year more or less? And how do they pay it back? Is it when they fundraise, they pay back the debt? Or what do you see?
I didn't get the first part of the question. What are the terms?
Like, what's the term of the debt? Is it like a year?
Yeah, it's a 5-year loan. Typically, it's paid back as the loan leaves. This is what's called an amortizing loan. They always have the ability to pay it back and get us out. You can untie our relationship. The reality never happens. And the reality is that actually we upsize the transaction because we end up being diversified source of funding. You mitigate a lot of risk, and we are cheaper than any other source of funding. But the founder has the ability to pay us back, and we're out, no strings attached. Yes, please.
Do you do a follow-on investment in your portfolio companies?
Yes, and we are about to close 2 follow-up investments next week.
Has any of your portfolio companies experienced any repercussions of future external funding, since having a debt may have?
Very good question. Very good question. I also would like to pick up your brain around that. I was a bit afraid because some founders are saying, okay, I need to pitch this and get my equity round. This might be hindering my ability to actually execute on that. And it ended up being on the other side. It showed some sort of stamp or label of quality after the job we've done, that the company has passed that due diligence and obtained that. And actually, we're now on the way here. We had a call with a leading Swiss investor about 2 other companies. So I think at the end it was much better than we thought.
How different is it? So here in Geneva, we have the Fédération d'Aide aux Entreprises. They provide a very cheap rate. And how different? And so they guarantee. They do the bank loan guarantee.
Yes, I'm assuming it's one of those that the bank gets a guarantee from someone on the development bank.
Exactly.
Those are great funding opportunities. We encourage all our funders exhaust that path if you can. If not, let's talk, because they are basically free or cheap money. Someone's guaranteeing. It's based on, once again, not fundamentals. It's many times non-dilutive. So you should definitely exhaust that.
Thank you.
Sometimes it takes 1 year, 3 juries, or whatever it is. But
Yeah.
right.
So how many deals a year do you do?
I asked the question. Most likely this year is going to be somewhere between 5, 6, 7 transactions, maybe.
And how many deals do you review every year then?
Nico?
Around, I don't know.
10x, maybe that, yeah.
Yeah, 50, more or less.
You said that if you had a lot more capital, you wouldn't necessarily be able to deploy it. Are you still looking for feeding in your fund?
If we're looking for investors' money,
yes,
we always do. Never say no. No, at the timing, so for the planning for the pipeline of this year, typically it's covered. We're running a revolving facility, but we always need to think about, the next step. And if you think it's a good fit, let's talk. Great, thanks everyone.
It's still cheaper than
the max.
The mic is for you. You asked the last question, right?
The lady on the back, I think, about the combination with equity and the perception about it.
So we'll bother you with legal stuff at the end. That's just because we know that I'm the last gap before the aperitif. So we'll try to make it quick, not dirty, because we like very good work, but let's see what we get through. I guess everyone here knows what a cap table is. If not, no. Then very briefly, a cap table is roughly your share register, very simplified. You include some metrics like the dilution after the use of ESOPs or participation plans, but basically it shows the figure of how your equity is divided among investors. Who is your shareholder and who holds how much of what type of shares. Now, before we get there, with this presentation, I aim to achieve 3 things. The first one, explain what a broken cap table is. Secondly, how can we avoid it? And thirdly, if we can't avoid it, how can we get out of it, if at all? And you will see it's not so simple. Over the life of a company, you will see different phases. When you start from concept, pre-seed, seed startup, early stage, and then well-established company, you also have different type of investors joining your company. These investors invest with different means, different conditions, and specifically at the end, sometimes you bridge the gap from VC and you go to capital market directly. Doesn't happen so often, but more or less that's the lifespan of the investment. It also means you have different investors. Angel investors, and owner, family, foods, and friends are very simple. Angel investors start coming with conditions. VCs are very sophisticated. They know what they do. They usually lawyer up. Becomes difficult for the company. They need to invest also in lawyers on their side. And then private equity corporates, that's a different level. And then we have the bank loans and capital markets. That's again another level of complexity. Now, what is a broken cap table and what is a clean cap table? I'll start with an example. Here, what would you say? Is there something striking you about this cap table?
Companies owned by investors.
Mainly, yes. Not only, but mainly. You have, well, employees a little bit, but here you have 30% for the founders. So yes, you're right, mainly investors. Something else striking you?
The main founder doesn't have a majority over the other one.
Correct. So we have a co-founder who owns 50%, but who doesn't seem to be executive. He's not active anymore in the company. And I introduce you to Joe. Joe is unhappy about that. And so what can we do about it? And I'll get to that. And first, I want to ask you a question. And for those who still have a phone available, we can do a quick check on what you will answer. What is the realistic shareholding of the founders after a Series A round? We'll try to get some quick feedback. Can you help me on
A realistic
We are
solution.
putting it here.
can you read maybe the outcome?
So it's 90%, 70%, 50%, or 30%.
Donc c'est sans ISOP, hein, c'est que fondateur.
Ahí me funciona.
You want to show them now, the answers?
Or we can read them out. What? Have you refreshed?
Yes.
We get at least an
So here we have.
sorry. Okay. Okay, but then
The results are visible for participants, so you should be seeing.
Yeah, everyone can
you're
see the
seeing-
answers on
okay.
their phone, yeah.
So we get most of the answers are 70% and the other main is 50%. So between 50 and 70% is actually a good percentage if you land there after your Series A. Now, next one looks completely different. And here we have the founders having 70%, seed phase investors 10%, Series A investor 15%, and employees 5%. Now, of course, Joe is happy. He's the founder, but the big difference as we see here, and we'll get to the different varieties of problems we see, but investors look at that because it has an impact. And if you have a company where your founders are not motivated, it's not very attractive. I advised the company last year or earlier this year, last year, and they were taking 80% equity stake in a startup. And I told them this makes no sense. I mean, you will not be motivating the founders, which they acknowledge, and not surprisingly, now they're restructuring and buying out the technology from the company, and the founders are not surviving this structure. So it's very important to keep them motivated. What are the common examples of a broken cap table? So first, strong dilution of founders' shares. If founders are not incentivized, they're spending nights and days working hard for the company, they're not motivated. At some stage, you will have a discrepancy in interests in the company. Misalignment between founders. If one of the founder who started a company with 50% is still there. I mean, still holds the same majority as the other founder, but is not active anymore. He's not bringing any value. And these 50% are dormant. So that's a big problem. Inefficiencies in ESOPs. You might have boards giving out ESOPs just to motivate the people, and somehow they end up leaving. The people keep their options, but they've left the company. So all the way, the small things to structure your ESOP is important as well. And then debt equity. Debt equity would be typically an investor holding a large chunk of investment who's not participating in the new rounds, is just not bringing added value neither. And that's not very helpful neither on the account. So you have to choose the right path. And we need to help Joe choose the right path here. Where should he go? Well, we can try to answer this one very quickly as well. It's what do you think could be a solution to avoid a broken cap table? And usually we get quite interesting answers. The last times we got actually very accurate answers. So let's see if you matched.
Your present this one as well.
Would you want to read them if you have them?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yes. Okay, so no answers still.
It's processing. Hire a lawyer. Yeah, well, that's costly and not necessarily the best solution, unfortunately. Keep it simple. Good. Control. Vesting. Okay. Get non-diluting investments. I can guess who that one comes from. Fire passive founders and reduce their ownership, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll skip to the next, but quite interesting answers. First thing, don't get diluted. And how do you do that? The best way, the very best way. You bootstrap. You do like Google, own more, own less. It has some limits. You can't go that far with that. So, but I mean, Joe looks happy, but at some stage you will need to scale, and then you can't continue bootstrapping. Avoid dormant founders. Definitely, that's an easy fix. You need to look at it at the shareholders agreement level. So when you start the company, you talk with your co-founder, and you make sure that the co-founder is okay to say, okay, if I leave, you buy my shares for a certain amount, and you have to discuss the value of the shares, etc. But that's something that is possible. And it's very important to fix it this way, because otherwise you'll have equity that is not efficient.
Roberto, maybe a quick question on the previous one.
Yeah.
How do you see investors reacting when analyzing a company on this is on the shareholder agreement? Do you see this as a friction? Do they see this?
If it's not there?
If it's there.
If there is so you mean there's a call option if the other founder is leaving?
Yes, correct. Kind of giving a sign to the investor, well, maybe,
Well, the investors will request it. When they invest, when you renegotiate the shareholders agreement, they will request it. So they usually request a call option. If you leave the company within 3 to 5 years, they will buy, and then there's a discussion on how much of your shares, etc. So those are discussions that are taking place. If you want to have a waterfall with the founder buying first before when one founder is leaving, the founder buying first and then the investor, that's all up to discussion. But usually, at least at the VC level, we'll get a request from the VC.
Can I ask as well on that one? That's assuming there's a shareholder agreement, right?
Yeah.
But often, it can be a case where there's just two founders getting together saying, okay, we're going to go ahead and then
Yeah, I think, I mean,
do that.
that's the biggest red flag I would see if I advise an investor. It means that, I mean, yeah, I'm not saying it's not happening, it's happening a lot, but usually it ends up with the litigation department and not with the corporate team in our firm. So,
but here you're saying there's a call option. So, I mean, obviously the co-founders can draw up a contract and which would regulate that. Are there any other mechanisms?
then a shareholders agreement?
Yes.
No, it's probably the only way you can manage it. I mean, the other way is buy him out, and it's saying I buy you out, and the price must be so attractive that he can't refuse. It implies that you have to rely on the reasonableness of your co-founder. And when you're splitting ways, it's not usually the point in time when people get reasonable. So I would say I really recommend get even a simple shareholders agreement in place, but then you can organize it after that. Again, what you can have, and we'll get to another solution afterwards in terms of how can you do if there is a sort of debt equity. We'll get to that. But I mean, if you look at the shareholders agreement or not having a shareholders agreement and then not having that in place, at some stage, the latest stage you will get a shareholders agreement is when you have investors coming in. They will request. I think even
yes, of course,
angel investors will request it.
Yeah, for when there's investment, for sure.
Yeah.
We're talking about before that.
But before that, I think it's, I mean, having seen too many problems, I would say even before that, you should do this. I mean, to give one sad example, I advised the shareholder in a dispute. It cost him probably 500,000 in litigation fees, not the litigator, but in litigation fees, and just because he didn't have a shareholders agreement. And at the end, he didn't get anything out of it. So it's really, and you will throw bad money after bad money if the first amount you've invested is important. So I would say it's worth the time and money you put in it. Source of funds, if you look at the various alternatives, not repeating everything that has been said already by Rafa and some others, but bootstrapping is easy. You have some pros, some cons. I mean, it's just a slow expansion, and that's the problem. And give it possibility. Grants are good, and as Rafa said, take everything you can. That's good money. Convertible loans, very good. They are subordinated, so that's the difference. So it's technically debt on your balance sheet, but it is subordinated, so it doesn't count from a bankruptcy accounting perspective in that sense. And the price that you fix for your round comes later on, so it's good. Downside is dilutive, and you'll have to negotiate a little bit the discount because you get the debt before the financing round. But yeah, again, it's what we see the most in startup financing. Growth loans, this is where Lendity is. Non-dilutive, paid based on cash flows, for example, that could be one advantage. Or the only trick or difficulty that Rafa mentioned also is the over-indebtedness question, which is not so easy to tackle under Swiss law, but it's feasible. And then loans, non-dilutive, but of course, interest servicing is complex and it's generally not available for startups, not at the early stage level. Now, how to fix a broken cap table? We have different methods. Capital increase sounds very simple, and we'll get to that. Secondary transactions, very interesting method, and that's probably one of the most efficient ones. Stock option plans can work up to a certain extent, and reduction and increase of capital is what we call in French a coup d'accordéon. Work, not necessarily something very easy to implement because it comes with a lot of limitations, and you have some disagreement risk with existing shareholders when you cut them to zero. So you could get problems and disputes coming. Capital increase. Now, capital increase has a very simple thing to bear in mind, and it assumes you do the capital increase on a pro rata level. In that case, the difficulty is it doesn't solve anything because everyone invests at the same level. The founder who's, let's say founder 2 is debt equity, he invests the same amount and he gets the same amount. So it's not solving. It gets new cash to the company, so that's a good point. But at the end, you're not solving, you're not reshuffling the cap table. So how to do it? You do it in a 2-step way. Now, first round, nominal value capital increase for the executive founders, and then second round, real value capital increase for the investors. 2 problems with that. Usually you have an anti-dilution clause that does not permit that in the shareholders agreement. So it's a discussion you'll have to handle with the shareholders. Negotiation with the parties is important. And then we have a trickier question for our tax team. There could be some tax implications. If there's a different value at this round than this round, the person who take advantage of that could be considered that this is, so if the founder makes this round, it can partly be considered as revenue. So there are ways to look at it, but it's not so simple. Secondary transactions, and that's why I'm going to this one. If you buy out another shareholder, so you have let's say investor A is a venture capital firm, you buy out another shareholder, the company has still no money. So here again, you need 2 steps in the sense that investor A needs to put in financing at the level of the company and buy out shares at the level of the shareholders. And the way to do that is usually to buy them at a discount, get rid of, so it's either a partial exit or a complete exit for all shareholders that you don't want to keep. And it cannot, well, of course, cannot solve it alone because you need still the financing at the level of the company. But Joe is happy with that solution, so it's a good one. One more point on this. To be realistic, in the Swiss market, you will see that that's rather sophisticated VC rounds. You don't see it at all startup financing level. So you would see it's Series A, usually not Series B, and usually it's done mostly by foreign funds. So
does this case versus implies that the upper share price is the same than the lower one?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. Usually you get a little discount on the price.
And your friend's still happy?
I mean, Joe here is the founder holding the company, so he's happy. Yes, but the other one who gets bought out is happy, of course. Otherwise, you wouldn't accept to sell.
No, I was referring to the tax authorities.
The other one. Yeah, no, he's okay with that. I mean, as long as it's not completely immeasurable, these are different transactions. It's not directly related. And these are usually common shares that are bought, and these are preferred shares that are. Yeah. So you have justifications to say it's not exactly the same. We're not comparing green apples with green apples. Stock option plan. You can foresee an over participation by founders. It's a little bit weird and it's complex from a tax perspective. Will it be sufficient to make your founder happy? Not so sure, because the tax office is always there when you get something, and it's most of the time considered as revenue. There are ways to structure it, but it will probably not help you revert back a completely broken cap table. And then last but not least, I mean, it's not something we use very often. It would be the reduction of capital. So all shareholders get reduced to zero, and then we increase them back to the same level. But with a reshuffle, I mean, they can subscribe. Everyone can subscribe. They have a preferential subscription right. Usually they won't, and that's how you reshuffle. There are conditions. You need to be over-indebted. Same rules for a founder and as an investor. So it will not help the founder get to the level he would like to be. It's a measure of last resort, reduces share capital, must be reinstated. So if you had a large capital at the beginning, you need to increase it. But usually it's not so much of a problem in a startup because you have low nominal values in the companies. And here you have a problem. I mean, what if all shareholders subscribe pro rata? You have the same problem as with the standard capital increase, and you have a litigation risk if things go badly. Maybe one shareholder will sue you and spend money on that, and that will just block the company. So it's not the recommended way forward.
For the second to last bullet point, you mean it like if the dormant co-founder comes in, would you?
This one?
Yeah, no, the one up. What's the problem if it's the dormant co-founder?
Then you still have the same pro rata thing. So if you have two founders with 10% each, you want to get rid of one.
Yeah.
Well, you don't get if he's subscribed at the same level. And it will all boil down to at which price you set a subscription price. And there would be ways to deal with it to say that I grant a loan to the founder that remains, that is attractive. So the VC funds, I mean, you can work around it, find ways, but it's not perfect. Definitely not perfect.
Yes, I mean, to deal with this dormant founder, which typically is the professor in the lab, could you have a system where there's an employee stock option plan for the founders, but only the founders get diluted? See what I'm saying? So not the VCs. So you say, we will issue more shares for these founders, the ones which are active, and therefore, you sort of play on that.
So that you issue more shares to the executive founders, but not the dormant ones. I mean, yeah, that's how we would use this solution. That's what we had in mind with this one, but it's not very efficient.
Because you can't do much, is that it?
I mean, in Switzerland, ESOPs are complex. So if you get options or shares, makes a difference. If you get options, you will exchange your options for shares. If you keep the options, you don't have any tax burden at the moment in time that you keep them. But once you exchange them into equity, you will have a taxable event. And for a founder, it is then revenue. So let's say you do it in a mass amount and the options represent a share value of 10 million. You get taxed on roughly 50% of that, which is 5 million. It's a no-go. You can't do it that way. So the way to do it in that case would be an early conversion, or you grant and you convert immediately, meaning that you convert at a price where the valuation of the company is still low. They need to hold it for a certain number of years, but still, you need a lot of options to cure that. So yeah. Thanks. And the tax way to see whether they consider revenue or not. Yeah.
So what happens when you can't fix a broken cap table, which happens a lot?
You buy out the technology and you start over. No, it's a problem. I mean, the secondary ways. So the best way is to avoid it.
Yeah.
So plan for it and avoid it. And the second way is find solutions where you have more money coming in and with a secondary sale. So that's really the most logical one. But yeah.
But what about, let's take a case simple, 40% owned by founders, 40% by VC, and then the founders, fools, and business angels earlier, they own the middle, the 20%.
Yeah.
So if you go and do activism and have one representative professional taking over 11, 12%, then you've leveraged the broken cap table and you create the swinger votes. Right,
I mean, usually I wouldn't be so concerned about the swinger votes because that has been negotiated at the level of the shareholders agreement at the financing round.
Okay.
So I'm less concerned about that than in a public company where it matters a lot. Usually you have very clear rules on who appoints the board and governs the company at the moment in time that the VC has come in. So I wouldn't be worried about that. It's more about the founders must keep a certain level of equity to have an interest in getting this through the finish line. So that's where the concern is. And 40%, if you're after a Series B, is probably okay. 40% if you're after the Series A, that's not great. So at that point in time, the best would be try to buy back a little bit for the founders, but it's complex because the guy selling will have no interest, and usually the founders have no cash to buy them out. Other questions?
About the accordion, you mentioned that over-indebtedness is one requirement. Is that the legal requirement?
By law, yeah. You can't do the accordion before, but usually that's a simple thing for startups to fill in.
I have a question. What Elon Musk does in the US can be applicable here.
Oh, yeah, when I was saying that, who will come with that question? And thank you. No, it's very different. And I don't know exactly how they are treated tax-wise in the US, but having an active CEO or executive chairman, I don't know what, technically it's an employee of the company, getting so much options, it's a taxable event in Switzerland. So it's unattractive, so to say. Because it means, how much is he getting? 1 million?
1 trillion.
1 trillion. So, I would like to say I see the tax payslip for that. In Switzerland, yeah. Yes.
Last question. Last one from the last slide at least. The tokenization of the equity, does that change anything in terms of ease of transfer, balancing things out?
Technically, yes. I must admit, I haven't seen many tokenizations, and for one simple reason, to my knowledge, I don't know if there are any others, but one reason that is blocking is I discussed it back in the days with, 3-4 years back, with a guy from one of the crypto banks in Zurich, their legal team, and the question we had was, how can we manage to get the shareholders agreement working with a tokenized item? Tokenized actually helps you transfer them easily, but a shareholder agreement is exactly the opposite. It's about locking the capital, making sure at least founders don't sell around, and most of the capital doesn't move. So making sure that you have the call option rights and all these rights that are so important, and the drag along rights. Because if you have a tokenized, it's like a public company technically. So for me, it's a completely different approach to governance and how you structure it. And I haven't seen many investors who are really keen on investing in something where they can't drag. I mean, if you do an exit with an IPO, it's okay. But in Switzerland, most exits are not IPOs. Most exits are things. So
How about voting shares and economic participation?
Yeah, we can work with that. We've tried it. First term sheet you send out to the VC, usually it gets back scrapped. So Well, you can try. It's unfortunately it's not what the market is used to. But yeah, we've tried, we've discussed it with the company and came back empty.
Yeah, it's a different angle to the cap table, but the last few years, a lot of companies have been pitching startups to have these pooled SPV vehicles to pool it. And I've seen some startups with like dozens of individuals on the cap table from friends, family, and fools. What is the advantage or not? It doesn't look very costly to implement.
So it depends on where you implement it. And you have some tax structuring issues. We have one startup that we advise that has multiple. Well, the difficulty is usually you start with that when you don't manage to get enough funding from one or a couple of investors. So you split it out, 50,000 here, 50,000 there. And it's complex to manage, but you can manage it in the sense that you have one investor representative or seed investor representative who's voting the shares for everyone, or as you say, you pull it in a company. Now, if you are a Swiss investor putting 50,000 in a startup, you want to benefit from a tax-free capital gain if you're taxable in Switzerland. That will block you because in case of exit, the money goes up to the SPV and the SPV will then give out a dividend. A dividend will be revenues or liquidation dividend would be revenues and you're taxable. So it's not necessarily the best structure depending on the way you do it. Then you have various other complex are tax related because you have the SPV in one location, the investor in another. So you add certain layers of complexity at the tax level that needs to be looked at, or at least the company must tell the investors, I'm not looking at that, and that you do that under your own responsibility. Not saying it can't work, but it's depending on the investors that are involved and the locations of the SPV. And another point to take into consideration, if you have multiple investors, if you have more than 20 convertible loans, it can be in withholding tax trouble in Switzerland. So you again there you have some limits to take into account when you do it. If no more questions.
Sorry? Who did the best question?
Wow. Good question. You. Too many questions. I couldn't choose. We can draw.
Who wants the mug? It's easier.
There had a lot of questions. I think he gets. Good. We have the trio.
On boit un café ensemble.
On boit un café. So,
we're getting to a close.
Yeah. So, well, before we go to have the apero and some appetizers, we wanted to thank everyone who came. Honestly, it's been a pleasure to have all of you here. We'll continue to do events throughout the year. We have another one coming up next week in Zurich, specifically for CFO and finance leaders. And we have another one that's the CFO Roundtable in November. Along the first one, the one that's next week, we'll be doing it along Wonderful, and the one in November along Yokoi and Travel Park. So you're welcome to join us. So yeah, thank you for coming, and yeah, we're happy to have you join us.
Very good words from my end. I hope you appreciated the event. I hope you enjoyed it. And maybe there was some value on bringing the frame on we need to use, we need to build with speed, but always with control. You know, let's embrace AI, but build things that are for real, that market wants. And let's make sure that at the end of the journey, we keep some of this. So it has been great. Looking forward to chatting with all of you. And maybe we share this with the speakers, all right?
Yeah, we have a gift for the speakers for joining us as well. So we brought fine wine from Argentina as a wing to that. So all this is for you.
Thank you very much.
And
Enjoyed it.